Right now, it's time to take another look at our preseason top 25 countdown. It's the Sports Nightly preseason top 25. Tonight,
Jordan Love, 5 for 10 for 90 yards and a touchdown. Quick throw out to the right side. The ball is intercepted, and it's a pick six. What a night for Jalen Walker. He has pass deflections. He timed it up. He got it. He scores. It's about a 13-yard run for Jalen Walker.
Number 16, the Boise State Broncos. Joining us now to help break down the Broncos is B.J. Rains of the Idaho Press and Blue Turf Sports. B.J., thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing tonight? BJ there.
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh, hey, BJ, sorry about that. Just introducing you. I hope you're doing well. We've got the Broncos ranked 16th in our preseason top 25 countdown. But first, I wanted to get an update, I guess, from Boise on the COVID front. How have the Broncos kind of navigated dealing with this coronavirus pandemic? Is there any news from that front?
Yeah, they were one of the schools in the middle of June that had to shut down for about 2 weeks. They had an outbreak, so to speak. Most of their positive tests were now within the program, though. They were on campus, just a general population, but they were still forced to close down campus, and they were forced to stop workouts because of that. So they had like a 2-week break in the middle, but other than that, they've been back at it, and they're in their 20-hour weeks right now and doing everything, and then they'll be starting practice a week from today. So to this point, they have not had any significant issues with it. They had an assistant coach early on in the process, like in April, that actually tested positive and talked about how scary that was for him. But otherwise, to this point, they've avoided any big outbreaks, and they're still pushing forward towards starting practice a week from today.
Well, of course, I know the Broncos probably have to be, definitely have to be hugely disappointed that their game against Florida State, which would have been on their own home turf, is now longer not going to happen. So, how is the Boise State faithful and the coaching staff, how have they taken the news?
Oh, it was, billed as the biggest game maybe in the history of Boise State football, certainly the biggest game in the history of the state of Idaho, probably. I mean, it was billed for 7 years since it was on the schedule. It's just a monumental game. And I know Florida State's maybe not the top 10 ranked Florida State team they were when the game was signed and agreed to in 2013. But to have a team like Florida State be willing to come all the way across the country to Boise, Idaho, said a lot about where Boise State was as a program and the fact that they were going to play, in a 36,000-seat stadium in Boise. So they're going to try to reschedule the game. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise that the game is going to be played, in a couple of years and they can get fans back in the stands as opposed to having to play the game this year with no fans. So it was a big hit for them, but they've got Oklahoma State coming to Boise next year in 2021. They've got Central Florida, Michigan State coming the next 2 years after that. So they've got some big time games on the schedule. Oregon State in 2023. So they've still got some Power 5 teams coming to Boise. Their schedule starts out pretty nice. For the next 4 or 5 years is pretty nice. But that would have been a big one for them to have Florida State, especially after last year, going down to Tallahassee and beating them, at Doak Campbell Stadium. So that would have been a big deal to have them come back, and they're disappointed. But I think maybe for their sake, if they can get a full crowd, in the stands in a couple of years and get Florida State to agree to come back, maybe it'll end up being a better deal.
Talk with B.J. Rains of the Idaho Press and Blue Turf Sports. B.J., Hank Bachmeier was the starting QB for Boise State last year as a true freshman, and he was looking good, but he did come down with an injury. When he came back, he wasn't as effective. So that said, what do you think that we can expect to see out of him this season?
Yeah, 2 different injuries, actually. Started the season 6-0. Boise State was ranked like 13th in the country, and then suffered an injury trying to scramble for more yards against Hawaii. Hip injury, had to miss the game against BYU, and that was Boise State's only regular season loss was the game he missed. They lost by 3 points at BYU. And then he came back for a game, started against San Jose, got hurt again with a shoulder injury, and then sat out like 6 weeks until the bowl game, came back rusty and didn't play very well. So he's obviously very talented. Threw for over 400 yards against Florida State in the season opener, but he's just got to change his style a little bit. He's one of those fearless quarterbacks that's not afraid to stay in the pocket and take that hit, not afraid to try to scramble for extra yards, and doesn't like sliding, doesn't like going out of bounds, but finally just took too many hits and had to come out of the game. So they've got to work on his style a little bit to try to keep him safe, let him know it's okay to go down and slide or go out of bounds if he has to. And But the kid obviously has a lot of talent and had some big-time offers coming out of college or coming out of high school, and to be a true freshman and do what he did, it was obviously very impressive. And so I think he's got a bright future if he can stay healthy. They've got a couple other quarterbacks they feel confident in. Jack Sears was a grad transfer from USC that came in with 2 years of eligibility left, and Chase Cord, who was the backup last year but started a couple games. They feel pretty good in both those guys, and they'll probably have some sort of role packages, things like that. But Hank Bachmeier has a chance, as a sophomore, to end up being a special player. They just got to try to keep him healthy and keep him on his feet.
Sticking with the offense, besides the offensive line, Boise State returning a lot of talent at receiver and running back as well, but they do have a new coordinator this year. So given that, how do you think this offense is going to look like this year?
Well, I mean, he was the co-offensive coordinator, and he just slides into the coordinator role. Eric Kiesau was the wide receivers coach already, so not really a big change. The offense should look very similar. You bring back a 1,000-yard rusher. You bring back, 2 of your top 3 receivers, your top tight end. You bring back the quarterback. The big issue for them is offensive line, as you mentioned. They lose 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line. 4 guys that had all started for 3 years. So a lot of experience gone that you have to replace. You lose a second-round pick at left tackle in Ezra Cleveland. Your left guard signed a priority free agent deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So you lose 2 guys that are in NFL training camps, 2 other multi-year starters. So the offensive line is going to be a big hole for them, to replace. But in terms of the offense, it'll be very similar. It'll still be a motion, spread, no huddle type offense that puts up a lot of points, and they'll sling the ball all over the field. But they've got a 1,000-yard, running back returning, as I said, and feel pretty good about the receivers. So I think that from a playmaking standpoint, they're going to have plenty of playmakers to spread the ball around.
Talk with BJ Rains of the Idaho Press and Blue Turf Sports. Taking a quick look at the defense, they're no longer going to have the services of their all-time sacks leader, Curtis Weaver. With that said, how does the coaching staff feel about the depth, not just on the defensive line, but as the defense as a whole, and their secondary and linebacker?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to the offense. Their big spot they have to replace is defensive line. They lose all 4 starters along the defensive line. You mentioned Curtis Weaver, not just the school sacks record there, but the Mountain West Conference sacks record. So 34 sacks in 3 years is going to be pretty tough to replace, and they lose 3 other starters along the defensive line as well. So 9 of their 10 starters along the offensive and defensive lines are gone. But Boise State, prides themselves on recruiting and prides themselves on developing guys, and so they feel like they have a lot of guys that have just kind of been waiting for their chance to step in there and on the defensive line. So you look at the stats, those guys that didn't do much last year and barely played, but they feel pretty good about those guys stepping in. They've got 4 or 5 linebackers that are all back after playing last year. They added a grad transfer that started 11 games at North Carolina State last year. So you had a Power 5, grad transfer at linebacker, and then in the secondary they've got 4+ guys with 20 career games played. So they feel pretty good about the back 7. I think they just have to shore up that defensive line. They feel like Dimitri Washington is a guy that was a redshirt freshman last year at the stud position, kind of replacing Curtis Weaver. They quietly are saying he's the guy that in a year or two could be, up there with, Curtis Weaver in terms of being an NFL prospect. So they feel like, maybe the names aren't household names, even to Boise State fans, but they feel confident in some of these guys. They're ready to take advantage of their opportunity and step into that role.
Well, BJ, before we let you go, just wanted to quickly ask you, we feel pretty confident in the Broncos this season. That's why we've got them ranked 16th in our preseason top 25. But do you think that Boise State has what it takes to win the Mountain West this year?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 16, and hearing that is a little maybe a little higher than I would have had them, but I certainly think they're top 25 worthy. And just kind of depends how it shakes out with the non-conference schedule. But Air Force was a team that a lot of people kind of liked as a sleeper pick in the Mountain West. Their quarterback is out right now and not going to be back, and that's supposed to be an early season game. So at Boise State's at Air Force. They're also at Wyoming. The 2 toughest conference games are on the road. So, those are going to be tough games. But when you've, been in the championship game 3 years in a row, 4 of the last 6, you've won 3 championships in the last 6 years. I mean, it's a fairly safe bet to probably have them as the top Mountain West team. I don't think you're going to be wrong there. So I think that they've obviously got a lot of talent, a lot of pieces, and they just have to kind of shore up those lines. And if they do that, I think they're certainly going to be in the mix to win the Mountain West, and probably in the mix to be that top group of 5 team and have a chance to get back to as long as they have it at the end of the season, a New Year's Six bowl game.